No one sees it happen. There is no announcement, no dramatic failure, no public humiliation. Self-respect in men is not usually lost in public. It is lost in private late at night, behind closed doors, in moments that seem small enough to ignore. A skipped promise, a quiet excuse, a habit repeated, even when he knows better. From the outside he looks fine. He goes to work, he jokes, he functions. But inside, something is eroding. Most men don't wake up one day without self-respect. They slowly teach themselves that their own word doesn't matter. And once that lesson is learned, everything else begins to wobble. Discipline, confidence, direction, even attraction. This is the side of masculinity no one likes to talk about. Not because it's rare, but because it's common. A man is never more honest than when he is alone. 1. Self-respect dies when no one is watching. Men behave differently in private than they do in public. That difference is not accidental, it is revealing. In public, men perform standards. They speak with confidence, promise improvement, project discipline. In private, when no one is watching, the truth shows up. This is where shortcuts are taken. This is where effort drops. This is where the real relationship with the self is exposed. A man may talk about goals all day, but at night he avoids the work. He may preach discipline, but privately chooses comfort. Each time this happens, a quiet message is sent inward. What I say doesn't really matter. Self-respect does not collapse loudly. It fades through repetition. What you tolerate in private defines who you are in public. 2. Broken promises to the self are never forgotten. Men forget what they tell others. They do not forget what they promise themselves. A man can break commitments to the world and move on. Excuses can be explained. Stories can be told. But promises made privately leave a deeper imprint. The mind keeps score, even when the man pretends not to notice. Every time a man says, "I'll start tomorrow," and doesn't, something subtle shifts. Every skipped workout, every delayed responsibility, every avoided conversation leaves a mark, not emotionally, but structurally. The brain learns a dangerous pattern. Intention does not require action. Over time, this pattern becomes expectation. At first, the damage is invisible. The man still talks about goals. He still imagines a better version of himself, but slowly, belief weakens. Confidence becomes performative instead of rooted. Motivation turns inconsistent because it is no longer supported by trust. This is when men start looking outward for pressure. Deadlines, fear, consequences, or other people are needed to force movement because inward authority has weakened. Discipline feels heavy because the man no longer believes his own word. Men with broken self-trust do not lack potential. They lack credibility with themselves. You can't build confidence on a foundation of excuses. 3. Private indulgence creates public weakness. What men indulge in privately shapes how they show up publicly, whether they admit it or not. Private behavior is rehearsal. Public behavior is performance. Overeating, endless scrolling, pornography, substance use, escapism, none of these destroy a man overnight. They erode him slowly by training avoidance. Each indulgence reinforces the same internal lesson. Discomfort must be escaped, not endured. The danger is not pleasure itself. The danger is repetition without resistance. When a man repeatedly chooses escape over effort, his tolerance for discomfort shrinks, his patience weakens, his resilience thins. So when real pressure appears, career challenges, financial responsibility, emotional conflict, leadership demands, the man feels overwhelmed. Not because the situation is extreme, but because he has practiced avoidance instead of endurance. Weakness is not created in crisis. It is practiced in comfort, rehearsed daily in private choices no one sees. What you escape today will control you tomorrow. 4. Men lose self-respect when they lie to themselves. The most damaging lies are not told to others. They are told inward, quietly, and repeatedly. I deserve this. It's not that bad. I'll fix it later. These lies feel harmless because they offer immediate relief. They reduce guilt in the moment and postpone responsibility. But what they really do is keep destructive patterns alive. A man who lies to himself removes the possibility of correction, because correction requires honesty. Self-deception is comfortable. It avoids confrontation. A man knows something is wrong, but instead of addressing it directly, he reframes it. He explains it away. He makes it reasonable. Over time, this becomes instinct. Truth becomes optional. Accountability becomes negotiable. This is where self-respect collapses. A man who does not tell himself the truth cannot lead himself. His decisions lose weight because even he does not fully believe them. Discipline feels forced instead of natural. Confidence becomes fragile instead of grounded. Self-respect demands internal truth, especially when that truth is uncomfortable. Growth begins the moment a man stops negotiating with reality and starts accepting responsibility without excuses. A man who lies to himself has no authority over his life. 5. Privacy without standards breeds shame. Privacy is powerful when it is paired with standards. Without standards, privacy becomes dangerous. Many men confuse privacy with freedom. They believe what they do alone doesn't matter because no one else sees it. In reality, freedom without discipline leads directly to shame. When a man's private actions contradict the values he claims publicly, an internal split forms. This split is exhausting. One version of the man exists for the world. Another exists behind closed doors. Maintaining this division slowly drains confidence, clarity, and peace. Even when life appears stable, the man feels hollow. Shame does not come from failure. Failure can be corrected. Shame comes from inconsistency, from knowing you are repeatedly choosing actions that violate your own standards. Over time, the man stops expecting better from himself because expecting better would require change. Privacy does not need secrecy. It needs structure. When standards exist in private, a man feels clean internally. When they don't, shame grows quietly, regardless of whether anyone else ever finds out. A man feels shame not because he is imperfect, but because he is dishonest with himself. 6. Self-respect erodes when men avoid hard conversations. Avoidance feels safe in the moment. Men delay difficult conversations with partners, employers, family, and themselves. Each delay feels minor. Together they create a man who runs from responsibility. Avoidance trains cowardice quietly. What you avoid addressing today becomes heavier tomorrow. 7. Men lose self-respect when their private life lacks structure. Structure is not restriction, it is protection. Men often misunderstand structure because they associate it with control or rigidity. In reality, structure exists to protect energy, time, and attention. Without it, life becomes reactive. Days are not designed, they are survived. Men without routines begin to drift slowly. Sleep becomes irregular because there is no reason to stop scrolling or shut the day down. Mornings start late and rushed. Effort becomes optional because nothing is scheduled, nothing is expected, and nothing is enforced. Days blend together, and when days blur, purpose fades. Without structure, discipline becomes situational. A man does the right thing only when he feels like it. Progress becomes inconsistent. Momentum disappears. He starts every week with intention and ends it with excuses. A man without structure eventually loses his sense of direction, because direction requires rhythm. When there is no fixed time to work, train, reflect, or rest, the mind never settles. Anxiety increases. Focus drops. Life feels busy but unproductive. Structure does not limit freedom. It removes chaos, and chaos is expensive. It drains energy, weakens discipline, and quietly erodes self-respect. Chaos is expensive, even when it feels comfortable. 8. Private compromises accumulate into identity. No single compromise ruins a man. The damage comes from repetition. One skipped responsibility feels harmless. One ignored standard feels justified. One exception feels deserved. But exceptions stack, and when they stack long enough, they stop feeling like exceptions and start feeling normal. What begins as a small compromise becomes a habit. Habits shape behavior. Behavior shapes identity. The man does not notice the shift because it happens slowly. There is no breaking point. No dramatic fall, just gradual drift. One day the man looks up and doesn't recognize himself. Udei. Not because he changed overnight, but because he tolerated small betrayals for too long. The identity he wanted was never built, because the behaviors required to build it were repeatedly postponed. Identity is not chosen once. It is reinforced daily through private decisions. The man you become is the sum of what you allow when no one is watching. 9. Men who lose. Self-respect seek validation instead of growth. When internal respect collapses, external validation becomes addictive. The man no longer feels solid inside, so he starts looking outward for proof that he still matters. He chases attention, approval, status, and reassurance not because he is ambitious, but because he is uncertain. Compliments feel like fuel, likes feel like progress, praise feels like proof. For a moment, the inner discomfort quiets down, but it never stays quiet for long. This creates dependency. A man who no longer trusts his own standards begins borrowing standards from others. He measures himself by reactions instead of results, by applause instead of alignment. When validation is present, he feels confident. When it disappears, he feels empty and restless. Growth demands something harder. Growth requires patience, solitude, and the willingness to improve without being seen. Validation offers the opposite. It rewards appearance over substance. It trains men to look impressive instead of becoming capable. This is why validation soothes symptoms but never fixes the cause. It numbs insecurity without repairing the internal fracture. A man may look admired, respected, even successful, but inside, he knows the truth. The respect is borrowed, not earned. A man who needs approval has already abandoned himself. 10. Self-respect is rebuilt in private first. Public change means nothing without private correction. Announcements do not rebuild self-respect. Promises do not restore it. Words do not repair it. Self-respect returns when a man starts honoring small commitments again. Quiet ones, unimpressive ones, waking when he said he would, training when no one is watching, finishing what he started, even when motivation is gone. These actions seem insignificant to the world. No one applauds them, no one notices, but internally something begins to repair. Trust slowly returns. The gap between intention and action narrows. Authority comes back. Integrity is not loud. It does not need witnesses. It is built in repetition, not recognition. Self-respect is rebuilt the same way it was lost quietly. On a final note, no one needs to know what you fix in private. There is no reward for announcing it, but you will feel it. Your walk changes because you are no longer carrying quiet shame. Your voice steadies because you trust yourself again. Your decisions sharpen because they come from alignment, not doubt. Self-respect is not something you demand from the world. It is something you restore with yourself, and it always starts when no one is watching. Fix the private man, and the public life follows.